Did you ever find yourself worrying about, let's say, worrying too much? Well, you're not alone. Yours truly once worried about whether squirrels in my garden were plotting against me. Yes, you heard it right, squirrels. There I was, sipping my morning tea, eyeing those little critters as they darted and danced about, their fluffy tails flicking in the sunlight. My mind began to spin the most elaborate tales. Were they planning a coup? Were they conspiring to overtake my vegetable patch? Or heavens forbid, were they aiming for world domination? It sounds ludicrous, I know, but that's the thing about worrying. It's like a wild horse. Once it takes off, it's rather hard to rein back in. But isn't it amusing how we often worry about the most insignificant things, spinning tales more fitting for a Hollywood blockbuster than for our humble backyards? So, you see, worrying can sometimes make us imagine the most absurd things. But don't worry, it gets more interesting. Now let's dive into some interesting facts about worrying that may just give you a chuckle or two. Did you know that worrying can actually be a good thing in small doses? Yes, you heard me right. Worrying can help us anticipate potential problems and plan for them. So, if you ever find yourself fretting over whether you left the oven on or if you locked the front door, remember this is your brain doing its job, trying to keep you safe and sound. Now let's move on to another intriguing fact. Worrying can make you more empathetic. When we worry about others, we are essentially putting ourselves in their shoes, trying to understand their problems and concerns. This empathy can strengthen our relationships and make us better friends, partners, and parents. So the next time you're worrying about your best friend's job interview or your child's school project, you can pat yourself on the back for being such an empathetic soul. And here's something that might surprise you. Worrying can also spark creativity. When we worry, we often imagine worst-case scenarios. And while this might sound negative, it can actually lead us to think outside the box and come up with creative solutions to problems. For instance, if you're worrying about a presentation at work, this can push you to prepare more thoroughly and think of innovative ways to present your ideas. Let's not forget that worrying can also be a sign of intelligence. Studies have shown that people who worry more tend to have higher IQ levels. This is because worrying requires a certain level of mental activity and cognitive processing. So if you're a constant worrier, you might just be a hidden genius. However, like most things in life, too much of anything is not good. Excessive worrying can lead to stress and anxiety, which can have a negative impact on our mental and physical health. So it's all about striking a balance. So it turns out worrying isn't all bad. And if you're a worrier, congratulations. You might just be a more empathetic, creative person. Who knew, right? Now, before you start worrying about not worrying enough, let's put a humorous spin on this. There's a peculiar little paradox at the heart of worrying, isn't there? We spend so much time fretting about things that never come to pass. It's rather like spending a fortune on a lottery ticket, only to realize that the odds of winning are about as likely as spotting a unicorn prancing about in Piccadilly Circus. Let's consider this. Have you ever found yourself worrying about an upcoming event, only to find that the anticipation was far worse than the actual event? It's as if our minds have a penchant for dramatic theatre, casting us in the starring role of a disaster movie that never airs. The upside? Well, when the dreaded event finally occurs, it's often quite underwhelming. A bit like expecting a lion but getting a kitten. Worrying can also serve as a sort of mental rehearsal. Think of it as a fire drill for your brain. You're preparing for the worst, so anything less feels like a walk in the park. So, in a strange way, worrying can sometimes make things seem less scary. And remember, next time you're worried about something, just think about those plotting squirrels in my garden. It could always be worse.